Well, never mind all that stuff, because COVID also taught Sunny Hostin how to get her groceries delivered. Yeah, I know, amazing. But that means it's time for...
Living your life and you're feeling low. You don't know what is true. You don't know what's true. So you quick flip through the channels to watch Sunny on The View. Oh my God, the stuff she says is dumb. Where the hell they get this woman from? She's a host who's always crass and lame, with lots of nonsense to proclaim.
Sunny Hostin just went full meltdown mode. And no, it's not Mercury in retrograde. Greg Gutfeld called her out so hard even her teleprompter started glitching. Hypocrisy exposed, drama off the charts, tissues flying off the shelves. If you've ever wanted to see someone unravel faster than a knockoff wig in a wind tunnel, buckle up. This is the showdown nobody saw coming, except everyone who's ever watched The View. You won't believe what she said after the camera stopped rolling.
Make fun of The View a lot, but that's only because they keep talking. Those hens are always clucking. They get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, and then I get to say stupid stuff for an hour every day, except on purpose. But every now and then, one of those dingbats inadvertently says something that reveals modern liberal thought so perfectly, it deserves further study. You know, like a weird serpent that washed up on the beach and you want to poke it with a stick.
Sunny Hostin finally cracked, folks. And not just the usual kind of cracking that happens daily on The View when someone asks a question more complicated than, what's your favorite color? No, this was a total high-definition, 4K Ultra HD televised breakdown, all courtesy of one man, Greg Gutfeld, who managed to expose more hypocrisy in 2 minutes than The View has managed to ignore in 2 decades.
So, Sunny, I bet you haven't been in a supermarket since COVID for about 3 years.
I haven't been in a supermarket since COVID. For about 3 years. That's when I discovered Instacart, and I give them a big tip because they don't always pay their people well, and it's so that's been an issue, I think, for the company. But man, you can get toiletries, you can get fire logs. You know those big Bounty towels you don't want to carry.
Those from Costco.
Somebody else goes.
Fire logs? She had to tell the audience that she tips big because even she knows she sounds insufferable. Hey, I'm an but at least I tip.
It all started like any normal Tuesday on The View, which means the show's opening was filled with the usual group therapy energy, loud affirmations, back patting, and a group agreement that they were once again saving democracy by one misinformed opinion at a time. Sunny Hostin, who plays the role of legal expert the same way a teenager plays Guitar Hero, enthusiastically but terribly, was of course front and center, delivering deep insights like, everything bad is someone else's fault, and facts are optional if you say things passionately enough.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Here's how she took the news.
If you've never watched The View, just imagine the comments section of a political Facebook page hosted by people who once read a Wikipedia article about the Constitution and decided they were now scholars. Sunny fits right in. She's the group's voice of reason. If your definition of reason includes screaming threat to democracy anytime someone disagrees with her latte-fueled worldview.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Fact fact of life. Interesting change of tune. For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
But then, oh sweet karma, Greg Gutfeld decided to get involved, and that's when the real fun began. See, Greg Gutfeld isn't exactly what you'd call polished in the traditional sense. He's more like a smartass at a dinner party who says what everyone's thinking but is too polite to blurt out. And apparently no one told Sunny that sarcasm is still legal in most states, because the minute Gutfeld started pointing out her greatest hits of hypocrisy, Sunny collapsed like a deck chair in a hurricane. Firstly, Sunny's magical ability to demand civil discourse while, just weeks prior, categorizing half the country as a roving band of democracy-destroying goblins, well, it's possible, but only if you agree with her 100%. Otherwise, you're basically an accomplice to murder. That's how Sunny Hostin's logic works. It's a beautiful, disastrous fusion of courtroom drama and middle school lunchroom politics. But Greg wasn't finished. Oh no, he went full forensic accountant on her, pulling up receipts like he was auditing her entire public career. One moment, Sunny's decrying the evil of family separations at the border. Fast forward to when her preferred administration does the exact same thing, and suddenly it's just complicated policy nuances that we mere mortals could never understand. Hypocrisy. Oh, she practically embroidered it on a pillow.
Oh, I'm gonna milk this till the end of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm gonna go, slave owner! Kat, I just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? Do you think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing.
Greg laid it all out. Sunny's outrage is a light switch. On when a conservative sneezes, off when a liberal face plants into the Constitution. She's the type to call for investigations into the ethics of someone's tweets while simultaneously defending politicians who couldn't spell ethics if you spotted them the E and the T. And the best part? The audience at The View responded to all this like the loyal congregation they are. Gutfeld could have handed them a photo album of Sunny's contradictions, autographed by Sunny herself, and they would have booed him for spreading hate. Naturally, Sunny did the only thing a true modern TV personality knows how to do. She played the victim faster than you can say audience sympathy, with a trembling voice and the practiced tears of someone who's been to media training 3 times this year. She spun Gutfeld's criticism into a full-blown attack on all women, all minorities, and presumably all rescue puppies everywhere. Because when you can't win the argument, just expand the battlefield until you're fighting on pure emotion.
I think that women, white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there.
Sunny, who spent years calling millions of Americans vile names from her comfy ABC throne, now wept because someone dared to point out that she contradicted herself more than a motivational speaker with commitment issues. It was the kind of emotional gymnastics that would earn a gold medal if Olympic judges scored based on lack of self-awareness. And The View? Oh, they circled the wagons like cowboys in an old western, except instead of defending against bandits, they were defending Sunny from the horrifying threat of being fact-checked. Whoopi Goldberg even offered a rousing pep talk that basically amounted to, remember, facts are a social construct. If you feel strongly enough about it. The producers reportedly scrambled behind the scenes, worried about Sunny's emotional well-being, as if getting called out for public hypocrisy on national television wasn't just another Tuesday for any politician or public figure. You'd think she'd be used to it by now, but no, this was different.
Joy Behar gets racism after all. She's been black on Halloween. Yeah. But Joy wasn't there on the show. Apparently Mondays are her days off when she feeds in the pasture. But that is convenient, right? It's like one of my aunts dies every time Brian Kilmeade wants to hang out. Maybe Joy needs a full day to read her hate mail, and that's just from the rest of the cast. So Scott had to deal with Sunny Hostin and her typical self-righteousness.
This was Greg Gutfeld daring to point out the Emperor had no clothes, while the Emperor sobbed into her designer coffee mug. Social media, of course, had a field day. Within minutes, Twitter was filled with memes. One particularly brutal one showed Sunny with the caption, "Strong opinions, weak spine." Another, hater crying on The View with the tagline, "When you realize receipts, don't lie." Even the apolitical crowd started noticing. Turns out, when you whine about civility while trashing half the country, people kind of remember that. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld's segment blew up online. His simple, sarcastic breakdown of Sunny's behavior resonated with everyone tired of being gaslit by the same 3 cable news talking points recycled every week like old bathwater. It was a masterclass in exposing how The View isn't a discussion. It's a live-action Tumblr thread with a studio audience. And better lighting. It's not a debate, it's a synchronized swimming event where everyone agrees on the choreography beforehand, and anyone who cannonballs into the pool gets booed for violence.
But unlike this chick, we didn't think it was the best thing that could have happened to us. Although it did get Joy Behar to wear a mask. People, you make me sick. It's funny, her being named Joy is like me being named ugly.
What made it even more delicious was watching The View desperately try to reframe the entire debacle. Suddenly, this wasn't about Sunny's hypocrisy. No. This was about protecting women from public attacks. It was about standing up to bullying. Apparently, pointing out contradictions now qualifies as a federal hate crime. In reality, The View is a safe space for ideas that have never been challenged by adult conversation. Sunny Hostin and her co-hosts aren't interested in debate. They're interested in a daily self-esteem seminar disguised as political commentary. And the second someone brings logic, consistency, or heaven forbid, sarcasm into the room, they fall apart like a dollar store umbrella in a hurricane. Sunny's meltdown was inevitable. She's been building the Tower of Hypocrisy for years, brick by brick, statement by contradictory statement. Greg Gutfeld just did the unthinkable. He sneezed and the whole thing collapsed.
Did you watch the whole thing or just the parts that I sent you?
I watched it. Obviously, just the parts that you said. Did I watch a whole episode of The View?
No woman can do that unless you're stupid. But
I have a job.
Here's the thing. How can they call themselves progressives when they keep saying that nothing has progressed? Then it's on them.
Right. I just wish I could have, what I would have watched if I could, would have been Joy Behar watching that.
Yes.
And being like, I totally made the right call. It was not an accident that they had him there on her day off when she was, presented herself as the, expert on systemic racism.
And of course, because no modern meltdown is complete without a rebranding, Sunny launched into a teary-eyed sermon about growth and being brave enough to be vulnerable. Translation, please forget that I got caught playing Calvin ball with my own principles on live TV. It was almost impressive, honestly, watching The View transform a full-on exposure of lies and double standards into a teachable moment about healing. This could have been the plot of a new Marvel movie, The Gaslight Assemble. Meanwhile, Gutfeld just kept on winning. No anger, no outrage, just that same smug smirk that drives the professionally offended absolutely insane. He knows the game. The second you point out the Emperor's nakedness, they accuse you of attacking body positivity. And poor Sunny? She's stuck in a loop. Now, every time she tries to pivot back to moral superiority, someone brings up that tiny little incident where she melted down faster than butter in a microwave. When confronted with her own words, she's become a living meme.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Like you said, and it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say on The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. But the problem with her is that she went full racist. She injected skin color into a fairly generic behavior seen in all spouses. Regardless of skin color, people marry, they listen to each other, they have something in common with them, they share their political views. She just didn't want to upset her husband by saying her husband makes her do everything, and then she'd have to accuse him of being a racist. Because if he told her that this is what white women do, then he's a racist. You see?
an eternal example of what happens when emotional manipulation meets actual accountability. In a just world, The View would take this moment to reflect, to maybe, just maybe, consider hosting guests with different perspectives, to encourage genuine debate, to rediscover the lost art of talking like adults without needing a fainting couch every time someone disagrees. But let's be real, the odds of The View embracing intellectual honesty are about the same as Sunny Hostin winning a Pulitzer Prize for political courage. Instead, we can fully expect The View's next few episodes to feature emotional support llamas, guided breathing exercises, and a 3-part series called Why Feelings Are More Important Than Facts, an exploration. And Sunny, she'll keep claiming the high ground, mistaking altitude for morality. She'll keep delivering speeches about how truth matters, all while avoiding anything resembling actual truth like it's radioactive. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld will keep doing what he does best, reminding America that the Emperor isn't just naked, he's also demanding a standing ovation for his wardrobe.
More time to talk. And I thought Will Smith wouldn't let a black man finish. If her IQ was half as high as her smugness, she'd be Einstein. And later it got weird after Whoopi Goldberg asked a question and Sunny chimed in again.
If nothing else, Sunny's meltdown gave us all a gift, a beautiful televised reminder that hypocrisy eventually eats itself alive. You can only lie to yourself and your audience for so long before someone, somewhere, points and laughs, and boy did we laugh in the end. Sunny Hostin's televised breakdown wasn't just about being exposed. It wasn't even about politics. It was about the inevitable collision between fragile egos, manufactured outrage, and the cold hard wall of reality. The View spun the wheel, and this time it landed on humiliation.